Okay. All right. Welcome to Toronto Bible Study. I'm your host, Mike Sampat, and we have our guest today, Justin Addeo. My boy from the interwebs. He's here to talk to us today about a few different topics. I wore a shirt for you today. You like it? You like my
Oh
shirt?
yeah, cool man. Nice.
That was for you, bro. That was for you. But anyway, how you doing, man?
Not bad, not bad. Just been working a lot of overtime recently. It's like they it's called full production. Just means you have to work like the your weekends basically. Your weekends are gone. So I just been working crazy. Just recently tonight they had a partial production, so I elected not to work. So
Oh,
so here
nice.
I am.
I'm glad I got you. So I got you on your one day off. Eh? Nice. Thanks, man. Thanks for taking time for me, bro.
Yeah,
Look,
no
man.
problem.
Well, so wait a minute. Wait. I thought you were like a security guard, man. Are you?
No, I was well,
You did it for
that
a
was
while, and oh,
yeah,
okay.
no, I mean I was. That was a long time ago. Well, not long. It was about 5 years ago. As a matter of fact, I'm looking to get back into security guard work. But
Yeah.
the 5 years ago when I moved from New York to Michigan, I started working in a factory
Oh,
basically, and
it's
I've been
right. Yeah,
working at
yeah. No, I forgot about that. Yeah, sorry, man. I
yeah.
was
So
still
I'm
thinking you were
working.
in New York. You know that? I was about to ask you about New York, and then anyway, so now you're in Michigan.
Yeah,
I
Grand
forgot about
Rapids.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how's it go? So you're at a factory. What do they make?
It's like plastic mold injection for car parts, basically like grills and rims and shit and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Uh, what happens is that it's like these big machines that like big presses that create them, and then this like kind of I can't explain it like a one like thing picks it up from there and brings it over to the other side where like robotic clipping arms clip off the gates that hold it, and then it drops it onto like a conveyor belt, and I take it, inspect it for deviations, on the part, and if it's all right I pack it. Once it's done packing, print out a label, put it out into the aisle, and like a forklift high low guy comes, picks it up, takes it away.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not a lot to it, just basic factory work.
Hey man, gotta make a living, bro. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah. No, like I said, I'm looking. Actually, it's funny you should bring up security work because I'm looking to get back into that. Prior to moving out here, yeah, I was a security guard for about 8 years. So at varying different companies, and
Oh, okay.
yeah. So,
So they
but
would move
I'm
you
work.
around though, right? When you do that kind of thing, they move you around to different locations and stuff.
Oh yeah,
Is that
yeah, yeah.
okay?
It's
Okay.
much. I really kind of wish I did. I didn't. I wish I stuck to it, to be honest, because it's a lot. It's a lot more. It's a lot better than having to stand in front of a machine all like for 8 hours. And
Yeah.
everything like that. But less mind numbing. A
Yeah. I hear you. I hear you, man.
lot
So yeah,
easier
I feel.
too, obviously, if you're just sitting in a parking lot, like or something like that, or walking around a building or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah. That's cool, man. Yeah. So what do you need a license for that, or what? How does it go?
Oh well, I in New York. I see. I'm going to find out about that. I just updated my resume, and I talked to my boss at the factory, and he said that they are looking for security work there. So I'm going to find out what exactly Michigan is like when it comes to a license. In New York, it was readily easy. You just you took like a 2 day course.
Uh,
Anyone, literally anyone. When I say anyone could become a security guard, I mean literally anyone could become a
yeah.
security guard. It's not, they give you the basics of it, and like the very first thing they'll tell you is, you're not a cop. That's the first thing
Yeah.
they'll tell you. A lot of people are under the impression you're a rent a cop, and you just are so not that.
Yeah.
You said you're there to do two things: observe and report. That's it.
That's
So
it.
even if there's a suspect running off and like that, you just take down all the information, call the police, give it to them, and they take care of it. That's
Yeah.
it. because otherwise there's a liability. Say like you run a person down and like tackle them or something. If it was done wrong, if the wrong person, if it was a misunderstanding, they're not gonna have your back. The client they're contracted with, they're just gonna like be if they sue you or whatever. So yeah, no, I always liken it to being like a scarecrow, but with a pulse. You're just there as like as a visual deterrent. People see a guy in a uniform, you're there. They're less likely to do something, but ultimately you really don't have anything more than the ability to make a citizen's arrest, and it's not advised to do so.
No guns.
You can. Sometimes if you ask to be put on a site, it depends with who you're contracted with. I never got a gun license, to be honest. I just didn't think it was worth, like being paid what X amount of money it's with a gun, to be put in a situation where you may have to use a gun. I'd rather
for me, man, if I took a job like that, I would never use the gun. I would never do anything. Like there's no kind of any risk to my health or anything whatsoever.
Yeah, no. I mean, I haven't really like I've been at lots of different places. I've never been in a situation where I felt like I was really my life was in danger or anything like that. I think the closest was once I was at a factory and they said that there might be a problem. Like they were like, I forgot what it was. Basically, they said that there could be carbon monoxide leak or something like that. That's the last time I worked at that site. I was like, yeah, no, I'm not there with like a possible carbon monoxide leak. But it's mostly just like the most, like I remember one time I worked at a public library. That was just annoying because there was kids who would come after school who would just be running around the library like it was their like playground or something. It's but besides that, I don't know, just mostly it's like parking lots, patrolling the grounds of buildings. I was at a college once. That was pretty cool.
That's fun. That's kind of cool, right?
Yeah, well, it was because like I really didn't take that too seriously, to be honest. Like I would like if there were some students there, like if I came upon students who were like smoking, I'd like smoke up with them and shit like that.
Yeah, for sure. Exactly. That's what you'd expect. But you know what? Yeah. When I was at school, it's not too far from here, my school, right? And I'm like, I was in the back, smoking a spliff, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And these security guards chased us like real criminals, man. And I was running through this. Listen, I'm talking about not in the field. They chased us through the field. Then we ran through the school, inside the school. They're chasing us. They're like on our heels, like down the stairs, pushing past people. You know what I mean? And then I ran out. And then when I finally got across the street, then they gave up. I was like, what? I couldn't even believe it, man, that they would do that.
Yeah, no, some have that mentality because, like, unfortunately, there's a lot of security guards who go into it thinking this is their bridge to becoming police or something. So they go in with that mentality. I go in with the mentality that I want to do the least amount of work possible. Exactly. I want to like stay out of the most trouble possible. I don't want to like it's just silly, like especially if you were like at a college or something. Unless there's like violent altercation, there's no reason to be like giving people a hard time. So whatever, So
anyway, all right. So listen, all right. So we're here. This is Toronto Bible Study. So let's talk about Jesus. Why don't you believe in Jesus, Justin? Let's go. Come on, get on it.
Oh wow, I'm really getting theologically here.
What's your problem? What's your problem, man? No, I'm joking.
I'll be honest. I mean, like I'll give a little background. I did grow up, as a Christian. From about
did you?
Well, earliest age
nice.
to like basically to maybe like till I went to college.
Oh wow, that's wonderful.
I was always
Hallelujah.
very, very like, Sunday school every Sunday, and then
Really?
Methodist Youth Fellowship. Um, I was always pretty devout about it. I don't
Wow.
think I ever like not took it seriously or anything like that. And I'll say this much: to this day, it really has had an effect on me. Like I said, I base most of my ethics or morality on the basic gospel teachings.
Yeah.
I really do. I'm not even saying that like in any kind of like I think they're just they're basic sort of decent things to live by. And and I definitely you said, why don't I believe in Jesus? I guess I do to a certain extent. That
Nice. There you go.
I do to a certain extent to the fact that I do agree with a lot of the teachings he has in the Gospels and everything like that. It's just, I guess what it just comes down to is like I'm not like I guess it just comes down to I've taken from it what I do agree with, and basic teachings of love your neighbor as yourself, and like some of the key, I think there's some keen psychological insights in the Gospels, definitely like what you think, what really determines how you're going to act towards others and stuff like that. And so I've taken it from it, I'd say, a lot. I've become skeptical on bigger metaphysical claims. I just don't know. I mean, I can't say one way or the other, so I don't want to call myself a Christian if I'm not adhering to all of the doctrines of Christianity. But like I said, I don't begrudge, or I don't have any bad feelings about I don't reject like the basic ethics and morality and varying different insights into people's minds and society, and certainly Jesus's constant lambasting of hypocrites and privileged people in society who think they're better off than everyone else. That has all informed me deeply. My politics and everything like that seriously has come from taking that seriously. You know what I mean? Taking seriously the kind of upstart figure of the Gospels who invade against people who are supposedly upstanding, but really are full of hypocrisy and greed and just and just being like judgmental, but really have not a leg to stand on in terms of their judgmentalness. So I'd say definitely that deeply informed any further political ideas. But like I said, I just become further skeptical about metaphysical claims, and like I said, I don't want to. I could be wrong. I could be right. I don't know. I'm not sure, and I'm not going to say one way or the other. So that's why I don't want to be one of those people who claims to be like a Christian, but I just don't want to say that because I'm not I don't go to church anymore. I do. When I go to see my folks, I'll go to church with them. They're very devout people,
Okay, nice.
Yeah, they're very devout people.
What denomination, if you don't mind, or what denomination is it?
Well, okay. Growing up, we always went to a Methodist church. We were Methodists. We went to Methodist church. We were very involved with the community there in the Methodist church and everything like that. However, my parents had a falling away with the Methodist church after I left for college. They felt that they were, they felt that it was too, they're they're fairly conservative people, and they felt that they were being too liberal with the scriptures and stuff like that, and so they went away with it. They went to like a quote unquote non-denominational, church, but from everything I can glean from it, every time they call something non-denominational, it's just like kind of rebranded Baptist, to be honest. Because like the preacher is quite obviously from the South, and he's like, informed by the Baptist sect and everything. But I think they just rebranded denominational to sell it to Northerners, to be honest. But so it doesn't seem like too like out there, like. But the funny thing is, and it gets even weirder too, is that after I left, not only did they break from the Methodist Church, my dad goes with my mom to this non-denominational, but he does not consider himself Protestant. He actually returned to his childhood Catholicism.
Really interesting.
Well, my last name is Addeo, or Addeo, rather. He's Italian American, and grew up, as a choir boy and all that sort of stuff. So he absolutely went back to his Catholicism. So to this day, he won't have even though he goes with my mom to their congregation on Sundays. If they have like a communion, he won't eat the communion there. He'll only eat it if he'll only take the host if he's at like a Catholic mass, the priest consecrating, because he does take seriously doctrines like transubstantiation and all that. So my family's a little interesting that way. Yes, they're both conservative Christians, Fox News watching Christians and all that.
Okay.
But yes, we're very different politically, obviously. But they also are very different amongst themselves. Like my mom's upbringing was very different from my dad's upbringing. My mom's father was Irish Catholic, but he was, he didn't really he wasn't really big into it. And the mother was like kind of German Protestant. So when she was young, she went to a Methodist church pretty much on her own because her parents really didn't go. So she was always more into Protestantism. And like I said, and she had like one sister, whereas my dad came from a big Italian family, like, 2 brothers and 3 sisters, and, big Italian Catholic, Roman Catholic family. So, so they just came from different things. And after they left the Methodist church, they both went in opposite directions there. My mom remained. And my mom had just Catholicism left a bad taste in her mouth because the Irish part of her family, like her aunts came to her one day and told her that her father's going to hell because he's a Catholic, and shit like that. So she did not, because her father married a Protestant, he was going to hell. It was like the thing. And this is the funny anecdote here. She goes to her mom and is crying her eyes out, saying, "Oh no, they said Dad's going to hell because he married a Protestant." And I shit you not, my grandmother, her mother, said to her, kind of laughed and said, "Oh, your father might be going to hell, but it's not because he married a Protestant."
Nice.
Yeah.
But hey, man, it sounds like to me like you broke away from the church when you went to college. Does that sound about right to you, or what?
Yeah, but I want to stipulate something there. Although I broke away at college, it wasn't specifically because of college. It was kind of leading up to that point. I was, although I was devout all throughout high school, I was beginning to read more, and question things more. And I know I didn't really break away altogether, like I was beginning to have doubts. I was beginning to question things. And I guess college was seminal for me in that I think I just decided once I did go to college, I'd no longer be living at home and I wouldn't be obligated to go to church. So, like I said, all throughout it, I was very devout. I went to the Methodist Youth Fellowship, very much involved in my youth group and church. You know, they'd go on, they'd do things, you know, all sorts of stuff. You know, go to uh, you know, big youth gatherings out in, you know, you know, like meetings, or help out with, like, you know, like I remember one year we went down to Tennessee to do like a day camp for kids who lived in the Cumberland Mountains, you know, like kids who came from like literally living in shacks, you know, because, you know, I was out there in Appalachia and all that. Uh, so like, you know, so I was very involved in it. But yeah, you're right. Once I went to college, I did finally break away at that point, because I just felt like it was kind of a clean break. Like all the misgivings or all the questioning I was having in my late teens, I just figured this will be a time in which I'll be able to, like, you know, like just explore otherwise.
And
Yeah, go otherwise. So yeah, so that's pretty much it. That's how it went. And, you know, much to the dismay of my folks, you know, I still, when I'd come back to visit, I'd still go with them, you know, to, you know, on Sundays and stuff like that. But, you know, I just, you know, it just wasn't anything like it was after that. So yes, you're right. College was definitely a point of a break, but, you know, it was a break that was coming. You know what I mean?
You always
It
had
wasn't.
your doubts, right? Yeah.
Well, I had some doubts in my late teens when I started reading more and comparing things, and just, you know, reading philosophy and comparative religion and all sorts of things were, you know, uh, yeah. So like, so that was pretty much it. But like, once again, I just can't state more that I don't have any like real, I mean, I don't have any more animosity towards Christianity than I do any religion. You know, I just, you know, maybe like, of course, that I would say for every religion, there's, you know, sects that are just too extreme for me, that that I would like reject. But that doesn't mean I reject it wholesale. I mean, I just think that's a kind of immature attitude to have, to say, oh, this is bad just because you know, there's kind of fanatics over here on this wing. You know, I mean, I just think that's stupid. You can learn so much from reading scripture, or, you know, and, you know, you don't have to literally be an adherent of it. You can learn things of it just from reading, you know, and because I mean, this is human culture. It's you know, it's the breadth and width of everything, you know, that has come before us. And you know, that's just the way I kind of approached it. Is more of something that is like, that can give you knowledge, but you don't have to literally be adherent anymore to it. So that's how I feel. Yeah. So.
Well, what do you think about? Well, okay, wait a minute. Let me think about this, because you know what? It's interesting. Because you went to university, and then you kind of, and I see that's a typical pattern I see. Of course, I'm not trying to stereotype you or anything, right?
You're
But
right.
yeah,
No,
that
you're
is a
correct.
pattern that we see a lot, right? And what
yes,
happens
no,
to me
that is absolutely correct. That's correct.
Okay. But you know what happened to me? It's a little bit different, because I never believed it. Mostly, or when I was a little kid, I kind of liked it. Like my aunt used to take me to church. I like that song, "Jesus Loves Me, Yes I Know." You know, I loved it.
Always,
I love
always
Jesus.
sing that as a yes. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great song. It's a wonderful song.
Yeah,
But like,
right.
it is, isn't it? It's great, right?
Yeah,
But
no,
you know what happened, man?
It literally all the time too. I was very much along those lines. Yes.
Yeah. But like, okay, so then when I went back to, because my parents aren't religious at all, you know. My mother was Hindu, my dad's Christian, you know, but they don't really care about it. And then like, when I went to school and I learned about evolution, I was like, all right, that's a myth, you know. And I would be like, okay, probably there's a God, and it's like a little bit in every religion, and you can learn a little bit from every religion, right? That's kind of the way they teach you in school too, right?
Yeah, I remember when we first met online, maybe back in 2013 or 2014. That was
Mm.
previous to your conversion to Christianity. So yes, I
Yeah.
can remember you were very much along the lines of like a generic sort of like spirituality, I guess you could say,
Yeah.
is what I would remember. And then all of a sudden, like I remember about a year or two later,
Yeah.
that suddenly you were like very much into evangelical Christianity. And I mean, I personally thought it was
A
from
phase.
everything at everything you presented to me before that, I wasn't too surprised, to be honest.
Oh, really? Really?
No,
You
I
saw
was not.
you saw that happening? Oh, well,
I
because I was so conservative, maybe, eh? Because
Yeah, well, right. It was that and a lot of other, things. Just was reminiscent of my own parents, sort of, Uh,
really? Oh, wow, it's so
yeah,
interesting.
so, yeah.
But you know what? The thing that really flipped me was the whole. And you say the metaphysics, the doubts about metaphysics, right? Or you're saying like basically like the creation story and stuff like that, right? And
Well,
your
right.
strong belief in evolution probably helped with all that, right? And then it was when I started to doubt those things, evolution and those things,
Okay.
that I converted. You know, that was like as soon as really it was evolution, it really hit the that was the nail that kind of
Yeah, I
I
got
don't
you.
know what does it say, you know. But then so yeah, so why am I saying all this? Because I don't know. It's just interesting that you went that way and I went this way.
Yeah, kind
But
of.
I
We
wonder if
went first,
I wonder if you could ever I don't know. Anyway, because I know we've had the debates about evolution and stuff that you're just not feeling it. My position on those things.
Yeah. No, I know. Um,
But were you okay? Well, let me ask you this: were you more? Because now you're very very. What would you call yourself politically? Like, obviously you're a leftist. What would you call yourself?
well, okay. Before I go into it, I just want to stipulate that I don't. Uh, I don't honestly think anyone knows, even on the left, what is going to be necessary for the future of politics. I'm just going to say that right now. I don't. I think that everything that's brought us to this point is something that may have been applicable to the past, but I don't see a lot of it being applicable in the future. Like at
Okay.
least in the way that it's being presented, at least in the way like we're just going to have to explore and experiment until we figure things out in politics. That's the way I feel about it. If we'll even get to a point of doing that, to getting something more, I think it's actually, you know what? It's interesting. I was thinking about it uh, on being on the left, and yes, I would say that my basic view is of communism. I am against capitalism. I
Right.
do believe, in that society should be run for the common benefit at all. No one should be you know ever go without in terms of the basics, of
Sure.
shelter, food,
Sure.
education, things along that line. I don't believe that there's no legitimate or rational reason that anyone should be left behind with the kind of technology, the kind of know-how that we have.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's interesting. I was thinking about this. I was thinking, we are in when there were communist revolutions in the beginning of the 20th century. We're at the exact opposite way around right now. In the beginning of the 20th century, there was a lot of political will, there was a lot of ideology, let's say,
Mm.
a lot of
Yeah.
stuff like that going around. There was a surplus of it, but there was a deficit of technology. We were
Okay.
just at the beginning of implementing mass production and stuff like that. And there was
Yeah.
just, the capacity to implement the vision that I just spoke of was vastly limited, even though we were just beginning to create an industrial society, and what have you. It was still vastly limited in comparison to like the surplus of ideological vision and stuff like that. Today, I feel like it's literally the opposite way around. I feel like there's a surplus of technology. We have all this incredible amount of technological innovation at our fingertips, all these possible things that they have too, that like they still haven't implemented because it's not economically viable, or it's just waiting for like a market of some sort. We have just an incredible surplus of technology, but an incredibly limited amount of political will and ideology. And frankly,
true.
I don't know if the political will ever come back around again, because everyone's so divided on basic ideas. I'm still a skeptical person even now. You know what I mean? But just like back then with religion, I'm still kind of, even though I know what, I the way I would have it, I have to realistically say I don't know if that will ever come about. I hope that maybe someday something will come about, maybe, but to be honest, even when it comes down to like right now with this confrontation with Russia and stuff like that, even the left is divided on something like that, and that just blows my mind, to be honest. Because you don't have to love Putin or Russia or whatever. I think I know he's not a communist. I know it's not that he has, it's a capitalist oligarchy or whatever. Right. But you should at least be able not to be brainwashed by the media to see like him as being like this like evil comic book hero villain who that just for absolutely no reason one day woke up and
one
decided,
day it's like, oh, Putin's the enemy, he's a villain, he's worse than Hitler. I know, it's so dumb, man. People are like idiots, man. I can't believe how dumb people, even like, of course, being a conspiracy theorist and of course my ideas are very different than the mainstream, but I mean anyone watching the news should be able to see that they're trying to villainize this man. They're trying to create an enemy in the Russians. They're trying to provoke this thing, this thing where we have to hate him. Or even like the way they try, even the whole thing with the truckers and that was all, to me, that was all manufactured, and they're like, there was, I wouldn't even venture to, it seemed very kind of like artificial to me, that whole thing. I don't know what was going on there, to be honest. But it's just fake. This is what it is, bro. It's a conspiracy, okay? There's Illuminatis, they run the world, you know what I mean? But anyway, I don't even get into that. But look, what I want to ask you about is like, why did you become like a communist? Is it because of your sympathy for the poor and you feel like there's this injustice and that's the way to fix it, or what is it?
Well,
that basically it. I know the Christian thing didn't influence you, like where they all lived in common. They all lived in kept.
Yeah. Well, right. Okay. So I would say, it's a mixture of different things. I would say, very much like I said, I don't think that anyone should ever go without. I don't see any rational reason to for any of the blights on our society. I don't see any rational reason that they shouldn't be ameliorated. Whether it be homelessness, poverty, when we have such great amount of wealth and capacity to do things, I just feel like it's a matter of political will at this point. So the thing is, and then of course there's that, then there's just that I feel things are just so stupidly lagging behind. Like we have so much at our disposal, so much technology.
Like we could be doing so much more, man. I know, I agree with that.
Things are just, I just feels like it's just so unbelievably stupid to not do something more with it. Just because what? So like Bezos or friggin' Musk or whoever can like make his stock portfolio can expand just a tiny, it just it doesn't, I just don't think these things don't have to be left up just to the whims of like the people who like own the most shares in the market. I can't believe that's the case. I can't believe that we can't like literally sit down and plan things out and just use what we have.
All right. You know what? Let me ask you this then. I get that. Sorry, would you want to? Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you. What'd you say?
No, nothing. Go ahead. Keep going.
Okay. So now, all right. Let me just put this at you then. Like, especially with the COVID situation, and especially with the Bezos thing. You're mentioning about Bezos and Musk and Gates and their wealth is just multiplying, right? Yeah, all those guys. So they're just, the billionaires are just getting richer and richer. It's insane. Just in the last 2 years, right? Since COVID, right?
Yeah.
So, and what they're doing, what are they doing? They're closing down the small businesses and they're opening Walmart and Amazon, right? So
yeah, we saw one of the biggest wealth transfer, even more than I never thought it would get worse than with Obama during 2008, during the crisis where they literally, did the bailing out of the banks to the tune of like over $1 trillion, and this time around it was even more.
Is like way worse. This is like multiplying that exponentially, and it's gonna keep going. It's gonna keep going. Now here's the thing. Here's what I want to say about it. Like, I think we should, at this point now, we should see what's happening and realize that the whole capitalism, communism thing was just a ruse, or not. Even if we don't say it's a ruse, it's not the truth. It's really not the truth. What's really happening? The government and these big corporations are working together to basically impoverish us and make us into the slaves of these elite people. Yeah. It's fascism. It's straight up fascism. In reverse, in reverse, like in a way that. But it's weird because it's like where fascism used to be like the national identity. Everyone had this national identity, the Italians or the Germans. But now it's like nobody has a national identity. They've destroyed that. So why do they want to do this? Because they want a global like a global system. That's what they're trying to set up, the Great Reset and all that. What do you think about those things?
Well, I'd say there's a lot of ironies here. It's that and believe me, like one of the first political activism I really got heavily involved in was during the late 90s, early 2000th century, was the anti-globalization movement. I was in, back when the WTO and the IMF and World Bank were first really beginning to, come into this really strong position as like, as what you're saying, this globalization steamrolled through the 90s, throughout Eastern Europe and Russia, and just, completely like, destroyed what was ever left of that, like at that point, and then you had all the wars with Iraq and then Afghanistan, So, well, Afghanistan, not yet, but Iraq was still like, there was the Iraq war and all that. But at any rate, what I'm saying is, I went out to Seattle, to during the WTO.
Oh, okay.
I was at the battles. No one even remembers or brings that up now, but there were like about 50,000 people on the street. It was incredible. The entire city was shut down because of mass protests. They had to literally call martial law the second day. It was like, it was incredible. There was just tear gas everywhere. They were like, you name it. It's like a war zone. It was crazy. It was a straight up war zone. But at any rate, that's part and parcel of what you're talking about with globalization and everything like that, with the way international finance capital has just been introduced into countries. And the irony, of the breaking down of borders is that it's made people even more regressively nationalistic and divided than they were even before. I mean, you look at, say, like with Eastern Europe, Czechoslovakia became what? The Czech Republic and Slovakia. Yugoslavia, well, I don't have to tell you what happened to Yugoslavia. That was like insane. Which was also right around that same time, and it's just, now the same thing's happening with the Ukraine. You know what I mean?
Mm.
It's just it's dividing up into two east and a west. So so the irony is that in the process of creating this global society based on international finance capital and you know transnational corporations basically having
Yeah.
no frontier that they can't cross. Meanwhile, everyone else is running but can't make it over borders and shit like that, or trying to get over borders, and it just like being chaos and everything like that. Is
Yeah.
that the more they have this unified world they want, the more divided everyone else becomes, and you just see it
Right.
everywhere. You just see it
Yeah.
everywhere. It's like like
Well, it's
Iraq.
probably just a reaction. Like, I mean, people naturally do want to have a nation, and they do feel connected to their people, or their nation group, their national group, right? And
Right. Well, I think I'm not against that at all, believe me. But like you can have definitely you can have that. Things like Yugoslavia, like for instance, the former Yugoslavia, it was a unified country. People had their own, separate ethnic identities, but they worked together as Yugoslavians, at one time at least, or what have you.
well, that's
I
what I
think,
mean. Like, that's what I mean, because like, that was an artificial country in itself, right?
yeah.
Created
Well,
by the
get
world
down to it,
powers.
all countries, when you get down to it, are kind of artificial constructs when they're,
Kind of, but like Serbia is Serbia, you know. Croatia
yeah,
is they're the people of Croatia. They have a language, and that's it. And in America used to be, as much as there's some, natives and blacks and stuff. It was a white country, white, basically Protestants, and
yeah,
or there was Catholics or whatever, but it was like, it's white, right? And so,
yeah,
and that's when America had that homogeneity. It helps to have a strong nation, right? But in the West, I mean, I blame it on Jews, and people say I hate Jews, but it's like you have this immigration of third world like people to the West, to the white countries, right? But only like the rich white countries, like the Western Europe, America, Australia, etc., right? And then those are the ones where the national identity has been kind of eroded. But where in Eastern Europe and Central and Eastern Europe, that's like they have a stronger national identity because there was less immigration and stuff like that, right? But what do you think?
uh, well, the thing is that well, it's funny. It's like you look back on the history of things like immigration, and even back when it was so-called white people coming in the beginning of the 20th century. You look at the rhetoric, and the people who were anti-immigrant back then were it's very much the same kind of rhetoric, the same thing, especially with like Italians and Southern Europeans,
And
like
Irish and stuff, yeah, yeah,
yeah, right. It's an alien culture with an alien religion, and
yeah.
they're not assimilating, and they're very tribal and inward turned. It's and they from strict wasp standards, they didn't, at least in the beginning, didn't really see them as being all that white either. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, true.
like if you really want to go down to it, Italian, like the Latinos before Latinos in America, and stuff like that. So when you see what's coming in now, I don't think totally different in the sense that the rhetoric is very similar, and at least in America, though, I mean, it's still the people who are coming in from the south of the border are still Christian, so it's not like they're all that like
Nah.
different. A lot of them, once they get here and they settle down, vote Republican. You know
Yeah,
what I'm
that's
saying?
true. That's true. A lot of Mexicans and stuff, right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Because they're
Very much
Catholics and they have conservative values
yeah,
and stuff.
very much
Yeah.
based on conservative culture and everything like that. So it's hard to say really, and certainly the influx you see in both the cases of the U.S. and Europe is that take for what instance what happened in Libya not too long ago with NATO once again coming in
Right.
just like flattening it with bombs, and then like allowing like jihadists to come in and literally lynch Gaddafi right on
Yeah, that was
you
brutal,
know
man.
for a short minute there, you could like go on YouTube and find it.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
like I almost felt like they did that for just to prove a
To show
point.
it to the world. Oh yeah,
So,
yeah.
so it,
No, I
yeah,
mean, well, when I think about, because like you were talking about international finance capital and those things,
yeah,
IMF and those things, right?
yeah,
Like to me, the way I look at it is they destabilize the third world countries, especially Africa, push
yeah.
these people into the white countries. It's part of a plan. Like you heard of the Kalergi plan, those things, right?
Yeah,
I know
I'm pretty.
it sounds like a conspiracy theory, right? But check this. This guy Kalergi, Coudenhove Kalergi, he was like an aristocrat from Europe, right? And he was the head of the European Union, like the old version. It was like pan European thing, whatever.
Right.
The
I
pan.
don't know much. I'll be honest. I don't know much about Kalergi. I've read
No, no, no.
bits.
I'm just gonna tell you this thing because this is the interesting thing about the guy. He was the head of that thing, right, when they started it, the European thing, European
Yeah,
thing, right,
yeah. He was.
whatever.
It was the seeds of the EU. I get it. It was like
Right.
this. Is the seeds of the EU.
Right, but this is the thing about this guy, and it's like you can find this quote. It's like he literally said that he wanted these people from Africa and Asia to come into Europe and basically mix with European people until there was no more white people, and then they would have a race there that was like kind of like the Egyptians, and it's weird because he actually like he was so like Judeo-philic or whatever. He was so into he really actually wanted the Jews to rule that new European people. Now, as weird as that is, like it seems like that's exactly what's continuing to happen to this day, in my opinion. What do you think about stuff like that, man?
Uh, well, I don't. I mean, like, I don't think white people are going to disappear. To be honest, I mean, I don't think we're going to disappear anytime. Yes, obviously, birth rates are going down, but you know, if anything, if you want to get down to it, if it really got down to it, you would just like olive skinned people would just simply become the new white people. You know what I'm saying?
Who? Oh, yeah. Well, we don't want that though. I mean, the thing is, white people are really like they're freaking awesome, man. If we just turn into if we just like darken the white people until okay, I guess like the Spanish people are white or Hispanics are whites now, or whatever. It's like
Well, I mean,
no, we would
Hispanic.
lose. That would be a big loss to the world, in my opinion. But
I
what do you think?
look at it like in South America, the ruling classes in South America are all derived
They're
from.
white.
Yeah,
They're
they're
white.
white.
They're white.
They're,
Yeah.
they're conquistadors. They're not, and I don't think they're going to go anywhere. And I'm not as concerned about it. I mean, I have one son who, I'm sure one day will go on to have children, and I don't doubt that, like, I'm not as concerned about it. I don't know. I could be
Yeah, no,
wrong.
I wouldn't say yeah. I'm not worried about the end of the whites, right? But I am. I can see that what they are trying to like destabilize white culture. My opinion, destabilize white culture, white nations, and they want to establish this like this thing where it's like I don't know. It's weird, man. I hate to say it, but it's like weird. This thing where like Jews rule all the other races, and they got rid of whites. The only race they can't really control is whites. You know what I mean?
Well,
At this point, anyway.
well, I would just say that every like there's racial supremacism amongst very different groups, and like whether it's Jewish or white or what have you. I just it's not something that relates to me at all on any
Yeah.
level, whether
All right.
Jewish
Sorry.
or yeah.
Well,
So
okay. Well, what do you think? So, okay. So what you don't think the Great Reset? You don't take that thing seriously as a problem, or
well,
what's the deal with that? What do you think about that?
I don't. I guess I
Klaus
don't.
Schwab and
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's just the thing. I'd say it's basically just like it's just a part of the same agenda that I was talking about before. To extend this kind of international financial system of debt servitude everywhere, and just make it universal, where everyone's is plugged into into the system of like being dependent on universal credit system, I take it seriously on that level. I don't know about all the other, conspiracy theories surrounding it, but I do.
Sure.
I can see the handwriting on the wall. What at least economically, and it's been going on for since it's been going on for a while. Since the end of the '60s, beginning of the '70s, you saw the first wave of outsourcing and the beginning of like multilateral institutions, like under Carter and everything like that, and Nixon taking us off the gold standard, all that sort of stuff, setting the stage for. And then of course with the '80s you had Reagan and monetarization, and they ramped up a lot of the use of debt in the place of what in the place of what what they called fiscal conservatism was really just putting everything into national debt to finance like this obscenely huge military budget, because it was the end of the Cold War and they were in this arms race with Russia, and it was and then you look at it and they had a very well mapped out plan. They knew that Russia eventually they'd undermine Russia. They knew that eventually the Soviet Union would fall, and they were going to do everything they could to get to to do that. That it was just on its way to that already. In the '70s and everything like that. Yeah. And Reagan really did ramp that up, and then. So it finally, it did that, and then they just said, once we get the Soviet Union out of the way, and China is basically mollified by having, markets with the West and everything like that. Everything else will follow that. They went to Iraq. They overthrew Iraq. It's a major power in that region that has control over the oil resources. Boom. Just savagely got tore that to shreds. The only thing that really stands in their way now is like Iran in that region. That's it. If they can get Iran out of the way, they pretty much, it's the end game over there. And then but now you see with Putin, Russia is resurging again. With more national protectionism, which is, of course, is an impediment to their financial, neoliberalism and everything like that. It's an impediment to that. So you see NATO's now like surrounding them slowly on the east here, and Ukraine has kind of always been that place, which was the route to Russia with any army when you get down to it. Napoleon to Hitler to whomever, they all
that's why everyone who kind of defends Russia, that's what they're saying, right? That you can't just let NATO take over Ukraine, because of course Russia, because they're provoking them by doing that. Even when in Georgia, remember when Georgia?
Yes.
Remember that? Because that was the same kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
It's like you can't just put NATO on their doorstep. Obviously, they can't allow that. Russia cannot allow that. It's just like ridiculous, right? So
no country would allow like a competing country to put their military that close to their border. Okay, that's insane. I mean, no one should take that seriously. And furthermore, not only is Ukraine like kind of right on the border between Europe and Russia and everything like that, it really extends far into Russia with Crimea and everything like that, is that the port of Odessa is right there with the Black Sea. And I know that they must be like biting at the bit to get at the oil. and that's really their big thing is they wanted to get it. They want to control the Black Sea. But if you can control the Black Sea, control the oil supply, and
the whole region. Yeah.
That's why I think they're just going overboard with all this. Like oh my god, like I think I shared like this literal quote that Hitler made about like Russians being Asiatics that we have to chase back over the Urals and everything. Like it's like literally that rhetoric is indistinguishable from liberal like diatribes against Russia. It's
Really?
the same damn thing. I you know, like you have articles like what do you call it? There was this article from. What I did was I put that quote over the screenshot of this article from, like, I think it was in the New York Times or something. I can't remember. But it was this, and the title of the article was Russia going back to its Asian roots or something like that.
No
you know
way.
what I mean? And Putin is literally depicted in a you know, a drawing of him like dressed up like in like Mongolian like war
like yeah.
It's literally we've regressed to like this kind of like Hitlerian view of the of Russians, and that's in a liberal rag. That's not some far right, you know, like thing. They literally are revoking Russia's white card is what I'm trying to say. They're literally like putting them in the same like category as Mongols and Tartars and shit like that, and like it's crazy. But I can only think that they are so now intent in their global chess game of getting control of the Black Sea that they're just pulling out all stops in the propaganda war right now. They're just like they're like whatever they can get, whatever whatever they can get to demonize and to you know, and get people on board. And it's amazing the bipartisanship that's going on right now with this Russian thing. You know, yes, the whole Russophobia, if you will, the whole Russian thing has been the province of like the Democrats and the liberals, and whereas with China it's been the Republicans and in the GOP. But you know, it's just amazing how like, you know, like these crazy like, you know, like across the aisle like things people coming to, like I saw this thing where it's like there was some like pro like online, you know, like online personalities and stuff like that, I saw like what was it, like Richard Spencer and
oh yeah, Richard Spencer and Voss. Yeah, that guy.
are both like on board the same like damn like pro-Ukrainian thing. I'm like, yeah, no, there's serious. There's almost got to be a psyops going on.
It is a psyop. It's total psyop. Of course, man. Look. The ghost of Ukraine. What is it? The ghost of Kiev. The shooting down the planes. Give me a break, man. People, you can't believe this. If you believe this, like, look. You know what it is. You know what it is, Justin, man. Every generation thinks they're immune to propaganda.
Yeah, I know.
But like now we look back at World War One. Everybody knows World War One was a war for like global dominance and oil, basically. It's the first war for oil, basically, right?
It was the first war for oil, and very much the same region right now that we're like, you know, like it was fought very much along the eastern, you know, front and everything like that.
Russia and all that, and it's like now, okay, so now we're here, and now people kind of, we still have this thing where we kind of grow off of our historical narrative still originates in World War II. So we kind of think that World War II is still a just war. We had to save the Jews and all that thing, right? And I'm just saying, like, this generation now, they think they're immune to propaganda. Just like the World War I did, right? And that's how they were able to convince them to go and fight a war over there and send their sons and all that, right? And now people think, well, if we just kind of take ourselves out of this, sorry?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, but politically, it's a very similar situation, more similar to World War I than to World War II, with like big alliances and stuff like that, and you know, it was pre any kind of ideological division. We're back to a pre-ideological divide, whereas with World War II, you had like the capitalist West and the communist East and everything like that, and now it's just varying shades of capitalism in some way.
Yeah.
So, in like buying, transparently buying, which is the crazy thing about what we're saying about being immune to. Never have things been so darkly clear what they're about, and yet somehow they're more propagandized than they ever have been. It's crazy to me. It's
Well,
nuts.
you know what it is? It's like because we're at this lower level where we can still see with our own eyes, but the people, the actual like intellectuals, the intelligentsia, the opinion makers, they're all like controlled, or they're just like they can't. It's not even like they're like controlled, but they can't have their opinions outside of the sort of Overton window, or they'll just get rejected and just get destroyed.
Well, yeah, there's a certain basic consensus that you can't deviate from. I didn't think that. Honestly, I did not think that consensus was so broad that it could accommodate both Richard Spencer and Foch. But
it is
apparently it can. So yeah. So that's my basic feeling on the matter right now with the current state of affairs and everything like that. And I don't really know what else to say about it, except that
me too, man. I don't know what to think.
It's a frontier. I'm just saying it's a frontier. It's nothing that, like, yes, we can liken it to World War I and stuff, but really you can't go backwards. You can go forwards, and there's a novelty to this time that makes me feel like we don't even know what we're going to get into next. It's like, there's no way predicting it at this point, how this is all going to like radically change over the next to the end of the
I'd say pretty much. I think what we can kind of rely on or expect is that the U.S. dollar is going to collapse, and we're all going to kind of be like impoverished, basically, right? And then they're going to say, to fix this, we need a global currency or a global electronic currency or something like that, and then it's going to be over. We're just going to be a bunch of slaves at that point. You know what I mean? Just like really just debt slaves to the global oligarchs or whatever. What do you think?
I mean, I guess that's not possible. I don't really know. I mean, maybe that will be the case. Look, the dollar, the petrodollar, has the de facto like currency. Everyone uses to trade in the most needed resource of industrial society, which is oil. And if anything's going to collapse the dollar, it's the eventual, coming of peak oil. And that as a resource becoming more scarce, and which is probably the reason that they're fighting at the bit with the Black Sea. It's just buying them time. I think everyone knows that it's coming. That that eventually peak oil will come, and they'll no longer be able to tie the dollar to that, and they just want to forestall that. While at the same time unseating Russia's hand from the tap, from the tap.
If we hit peak oil, would that really? Because look, wouldn't that just raise the price of oil so much, and would that really unseat the petrodollar system or whatever that is?
Yeah.
Because I don't really look. For me, it's like I don't really think. To me, it's like this, like. So Nixon instituted the fiat U.S. dollar system, okay, and he took it off the gold standard, right? So now it's like, the U.S. dollar is the reserve currency, okay.
They had to do it because they were getting too much competition from other burgeoning industrial powers that were rebuilding themselves after the war. Germany and basically.
The people were demanding their gold, and America didn't have it. So well, at that point, it was kind of like the whole world had to just take it. It's like, what can you do? What are you gonna do?
Yeah, well, that's like we were the only ones standing, really. Well, us and even Russia was like kind of like rebuilding itself from one of the worst, like bloodiest combat, wars in human history and everything like that. So we were like really the only ones really standing in terms of like, like economically speaking. We're, although like Russia was very much had industrialized at a rapid pace even during the war, and so of course this kicked off the Cold War and everything. But during the Cold War, the U.S. was uncontested because Europe, had to be rebuilt with the Marshall Plan. It still was, the rest of the world had to take it because the U.S. was top dog.
But then once they go to that system where it's like everyone else is using U.S. dollars instead of gold or whatever, right? Yeah. Once you get to that system, it's like America can just print money when they need money, right? And every other country has to. They can't do that. So that's why America became so wealthy, right? But that's why the whole industry there turned from manufacturing to like finance and the knowledge economy and all that stuff, right? Right. And that's why it's kind of like a fake economy now. It's kind of like they don't make things anymore. They don't make real things anymore, right?
Yeah, I mean.
Now, why am I going with this? Sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Where I was going with it is so the petrodollar thing, to me, that's just like, okay, yeah, Nixon was the one who made OPEC start to buy they would sell all oil in US dollars. And that creates this artificial demand for the US dollar, right? So that's what props it up a little bit, right? But then, to me, it's like, that's not the thing. What they're trying to do, in my opinion, and this is, again, a conspiracy theory, I guess, right? But it's like, they've got everybody dependent on the U.S. dollar now. And if they just keep pumping it up, and inflating it, right? It looks like they're inflating it to inflate their debt away. But at some point, it might get so bad that, like let's say, like, China stops buying U.S. treasuries one year, or whatever, or some of those countries. Yeah. Then the whole demand for U.S. dollars just collapses, and then what happens, I don't know. I think that's what they're trying to do. They're literally trying to do that. The super rich, those financiers you were talking about, right? They want to like destroy our economy, and then they're going to be the only ones who own anything. And I don't know. What do you think?
Oh yeah, I mean it's you can see it right now. It's just like monopoly capitalism is just like has never been so consolidated into tiny fraction of the population. I mean, it's always been like that, but now it's just like absolutely like ridiculous. Yeah. It's ridiculous. I mean, I saw the beginning of it like in the 90s when they with like the merger of ABC and Cap City, and I would have never. I mean, I knew that Disney was going to become big and that they were planning on becoming big. I didn't even know it was going to become quite as big as it has right now. I mean, you know what I mean? Where they literally own like everything, like Fox everything
and everything. Yeah, they're just huge now. Yeah,
and you saw it coming. I guess I knew it was kind of big. I remember writing an article, satirizing Disney and what have you, and they never took it for like the magazine I was writing for at the time, because they said they might want to, they might want to attract Disney as like an investor at some point, and didn't want. Yeah. I'm not even joking. This was a tiny rag on Long. It wasn't like anything that you should even like take seriously. But even they were like, if some tiny little no account, like entertainment rag on Long Island, was concerned about how Disney would see them, and this was back in the 90s. That gives you some kind of idea about like even where it was going.
The
power.
They control the whole conversation. But I was going to ask you too. What do you think about this whole idea? Maybe you heard about it, or I don't know, but it's like after Occupy Wall Street, or they say as soon as sorry.
I said another thing I was at was Occupy.
Yeah, I know you were there too, right? So yeah, this is gonna hit close to home for you, but like it was right at that time, because people were complaining about these financiers and all that, right? and that's when like the word racism and the word sexism and those things start jumping in the New York Times and all those things. If you check those, like the occurrence of those words in the media, and that's when like it became this thing about getting the rich turned into getting like whites or men or whatever, and it was focused onto those issues rather than the class issue. What do you think about that?
There's something to that, but I've always taken any of their so-called concern about race or gender.
Yeah, you take it with a grain of salt for sure.
I take it with a grain of salt because a lot of it is just old-fashioned tokenism.
Yeah, for sure. Totally.
You know what I mean? So like, there's a lot to be said about racism and sexism and how it actually impedes class consciousness as far as I'm concerned. But I'm not even going to go there. But the thing is that anytime like any of these people, these elite intelligentsia are pretending to be woke or whatever the hell, you just know that they're full of shit. And
it's such a joke, man. I was saying to my friend the other day how I'd rather have a beer with Miller. By the way, for the viewers, Miller is a famous racist and anti-Semite that we all know from the internet. But he's like admits that he's racist. He admits he's anti-Semite. He calls me a dot head and a packy and stuff. I would rather have a beer with that dude than a white liberal any day of the week. Any day of the week. But anyway, and you know why, Justin. You know exactly why too. It's like they're so fake. But what were you gonna say? Sorry.
Yeah. No, they are fake. I mean, it's a tag team really. When you get down to it's like the whole good cop bad cop thing. The liberal playing good cop, and obviously the right winger playing the bad cop. So so you're right about the fake thing. The kind of the kind of narc. You just know they're narcs who are just gonna who would sell you out. In a heart. If they when it's expedient to do so. But I guess
you know what the other thing is too, man. Like as much as Miller will talk shit about, like Indians or whatever or blacks or whatever, it's like if he sat down with for a beer with me, it would be like we'd be cool and he'd be my friend. But if a white liberal sat down with me for a beer, they really wouldn't enjoy it, and they would really actually want to leave as soon as possible and stuff. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, I don't know. Like, does that make sense? I think they're the real racist, and like, I don't know. What do you mean?
Yeah, no, I mean the racism's more subtle, but it's there definitely. Just in the fact that they believe that they're the ones who have the monopoly on minority allegiance or what have you and stuff like that. Yeah. I mean, either side, believe me, I don't, I would not want to sit down with Miller, but I agree. I agree with you. These kind of snakes in the grass are have to watch out. I mean, listen, I was at Occupy Wall Street. I was arrested there twice and everything. But I've looked back on it, and I think a lot, and I'll say this much, I'll even throw this conspiracy bone your way. I really do feel like a lot of Occupy Wall Street was AstroTurf. Not all of it. I wasn't, certainly. No one was inviting me behind the scenes to they build it as a leaderless movement, but that is so far from the truth. There were definitely activists there who were professional activists who set up a lot of the protests and stuff like that, and
you see any Soros fingerprints on that or what?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
or whoever.
Possibly, but I just know. I'm thinking more like the State Department and stuff like that.
Really? Wow. Okay,
oh, yeah.
Serious,
well,
man. I'm sure there was some of that. Yeah, some what do they call it? What do they call those guys? The French word for that? I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, that kind of thing. Like they have their government agents,
provocateur.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
provocateur. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, not just that. Like in there were a lot of people came through Zuccotti Park to talk. I mean, so many I've lost track of it at the time. It was just
yeah.
so many. But in the very, very beginning, and I wasn't around for it, unfortunately, but like literally Otpor, I don't know if you ever heard of Otpor, but Otpor, someone from Otpor actually spoke there, and I missed it, unfortunately, because I would have liked to have seen it. But Otpor are basically like revolutionaries for hire, I guess you could say. They were instrumental in bringing down Milosevic through like
Oh,
through what we call like color revolutions now,
yeah,
and
yeah,
yeah, very so, and also had their hand in shaping the dissent in the Arab Spring,
yeah,
which
yeah.
at least started out as organic. See, a lot of these things. The thing is, a lot of these
They start out organic, and then it becomes taken
organic,
over.
and then
Yeah.
they're co-opted. They're just straight up co-opted, and I felt like they were doing a lot of co-optation during Occupy Wall Street. And the one thing that I just that I realized that made me realize that was that there was no occupation of Wall Street. I like well there was no mass occupation of Wall Street. I was literally there on the first day in the morning. They said, "Come down to Wall Street, and we're going to be, like protesting outside there." I got there, like down to Wall Street and everything. There were about maybe 12 people there at most who showed up, and that was the last time I saw any kind of protest of anyone occupying Wall Street, literally.
Really?
For yeah. So I got there. We were all there standing around outside the U.S. Stock Exchange, like New York Stock Exchange, like with our signs and everything, or maybe 12 of us. Like there was like what do you call that? Like a Boy Scout troop coming by and everything, like on some field trip or something, Cub Scouts or whatever coming by. It was hilarious. We're just standing around like here, like, a handful of us. And up at the top of the street is, masses of people were already beginning to get together and I got there early in the morning because I wanted to be there early, which worked out well because I literally was one of the few people who actually occupied Wall Street. There. So finally they just said to us, "Listen, it's either you go back with the rest of the people with OWS, and they're going to be down at." The square, I can't remember, it's something green square, right by where that big bull is, that with the big, and everything. You can either go with there or you're going to get arrested. That's literally what they said. So yeah, so I figured it'd probably just a better idea if I went down with the rest of the crowd to see how they're going to work this out. And eventually they just went from that square to Zuccotti Square, and that's where everyone stayed at for the next 3 months or whatever it was, and or 2 months really, and until the cops basically just had enough and chased everybody out. But yeah, I would say that what really gave me the idea that maybe this wasn't all it's cracked up to be was that they really didn't organize much of like a mass, occupation of Wall Street. It was just that thing at the very beginning. And I just began to feel like they really were corralling the movement, away from anything that could have possibly worked.
They were never allowed to do a real protest. It's like it was always controlled, and
yeah, I felt very controlled opposition going on throughout the entire thing. I mean, like at one point, we had like this never-ending supply of pizza that just seemed to come out of nowhere. Like, like supposedly it was from donations all over the place. Over the internet, people were supposedly donating everywhere to give us like a never-ending supply of pizza. I never quite like bought that though. I mean, maybe it's possible that was the case. I just felt like I felt like maybe there was more to that than like than met the eye. But there certainly were a lot of people involved in that, and it was an interesting time, and I don't regret it really because it was like when I was arrested the second time in Duarte Park, I was in jail cell with this like 90-year-old priest, and
Really?
oh yeah, he was in his 90s or something to that effect, and he was like actually converted from Judaism over to Catholicism. He was telling me about it,
Whoa.
like after his family escaped Europe, back and he came over, he converted to Catholicism, and we talked in the jail. It was really amazing, like talking to someone that old who was like, like a witness to history and everything like that. And
For sure.
and I remember when he said we were talking about Thomas Merton. I don't know if you ever heard of Thomas Merton, but
Sure.
he was
Sociologist.
no,
What is it?
Merton was he was a Catholic convert who.
Oh, wait. No. Yeah, I know who that is. Yeah, Thomas Merton. Of
Yeah,
course. Yeah, he's like a monk kind of or something, right?
monk,
Or
yeah,
yeah.
he was
Yeah.
telling we were talking about Tom. He was talking about Thomas Merton actually, and he said that like Thomas Merton towards the end of his life was actually at like the protests in Paris in '68 and stuff like that. I wrote an essay, a little known essay called Marxism and Monasticism, and that I should read it or whatever. Yeah. So it was interesting. Everything was interesting. It really, I don't, it was an interesting time. And even though I do feel like in the end, it really didn't, that it was more like, I feel like there was corralling people, not even just in terms of like not to do anything like too radical, but I felt like the beginning of the Sanders campaign started from there. And they were really trying to push people into the left wing of the Democrats. I felt like that was kind of like a part of it too. Because I remember just before Sanders took off big back then in 2011, 2012, I was already beginning to see like people having Sanders signs at like Occupy Wall Street and stuff like that. And that was long before he even became like one of the contenders, in the race. But so I feel like they were really that the whole Sanders thing has its roots in Occupy Wall Street to a large extent. But yeah, but
no, because you know what, they you're right, because they just if it did begin as a grassroots thing, any kind of grassroots thing gets immediately co-opted by these people, man. They know.
Yeah.
They know to control you. If you're gonna control, if any like opposition comes up, they have to control it.
Here's one other interesting tidbit about Occupy Wall Street. Do you know who Caleb Maupin is? Maupin. He's like this kind of like sort of like internet commie type. Maupin. Caleb, okay. No. Oh, at any rate, look him up. He has his own YouTube channel. He's kind of a minor celebrity. He's kind of like a lot of other communists don't like him because he's open to like Eurasianism and stuff like that, and like with Nazbol, National Bolshevism stuff. And a lot of people don't, Any rate, I met him at Occupy Wall Street before he became this like minor celebrity on the internet and everything like that. When he was still in Workers' World Party and stuff like that. But look up the name sometime, you'll see. But like,
I'm looking at him right now. Yeah, I can see. Yeah. He's like a famous kind of guy. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, like he now does for like RT, like he's a journalist for RT now or whatever. But like, I met him in Occupy Wall Street back when he still had like long hair and a goatee, and like, it's kind of funny. But like nowadays, he's like extremely controversial. You either love him or hate him, and I think most people kind of hate him on the left. But any rate, so that was just another thing that I remembered from Occupy, and But any rate,
that's an interesting experience.
Yeah. That was kind of like I would say like every decade or so since the '90s, I've had been involved in something big, like whether it was the anti-globalization movement, and then the anti-war campaign came along with Iraq. I wasn't as deeply involved with that as I was during the anti-globalization movement.
Right.
But then, Occupy Wall Street came in after that, and then, the whole like Black Lives Matter and all that. But like, but yeah, so I don't even know where I'm going with all this, but
No,
that's
it's
just
super interesting, man, that you went through that. Like, it's really good that you went through that, actually, because I'm glad to have this perspective on it.
yeah.
You
Thanks,
actually
man.
were there on the ground, man. That's cool.
I always try to be.
Yeah.
When I heard about what was going on in Seattle, I just intuitively knew that this was going to be big, because like
Yeah.
I've been learning about globalization for the last couple of years, have been reading up on it and about how the IMF and World Bank, go into countries and turn them into debt slaves and completely ruin the economy, and and that's why you're seeing so much of the poverty you're seeing right now and everything in the third world. These countries were developing up until the 80s, and then bam, just like these structural adjustment programs, they call them
Oh
SAPs, aptly
yeah.
named
Yeah.
SAPs, that
Absolutely.
like
Yeah. Sap the blood from the people.
yes,
Yeah. No.
aptly named SAPs. They definitely,
Oh my
yes,
gosh.
that totally like bankrupted these nations and everything like
Yeah.
that. And yeah, so I've been learning about globalization for a while. So I just intuitively knew when this was good, that Seattle was going to be big. And I just fortunately at the time I had just gotten married, and we had money from the wedding, so I was able to buy a ticket to go, a plane ticket, because I still had money from like my wedding. And so it just a lot of fortunate things came together that allowed me to go out there and everything like that. So like, and I'm glad I did. I felt like I was really like witness to some amazing stuff out there, and
Yeah.
everything. And even though it's like not as celebrated as it used to be, but I feel like it really kicked off activism as we know it, from the 90s, from the end of the 90s up till now. A lot of it you can trace that back to the globalization movement. you
Yeah.
know
I'm
but
waiting for you to. I'm waiting for you to get cynical, like the hippies when they grew up and became yuppies. Like when's that gonna happen, man?
yeah.
Like you're halfway there. You're kind of like, oh, it was all controlled opposition and stuff. So
Well, I mean, I'm cynical to that extent. I mean, like I said at the very beginning, I don't know what's going to be the next step. Even though I generally have communistic ideals, I don't really believe they're going that like what happened in Russia is going to apply to the US. You know what I mean? We're at completely different stages of development than they were back then. The culture is completely different. It's not like, so it's whatever is going to take place, it has to be like within the given conditions we're presented with now. And I just don't know what that's going to be. It's going to have to take a lot of thinking outside the box. Uh, Frankly, I don't, and bringing people together. And frankly, I don't know if it might be that might be all tapped out. I don't know yet. I don't want to be too pessimistic about it though, because there's nothing that can be had by just being completely pessimistic. I mean, you know,
nah, yeah,
if you think you can't do it, you can't. Or how that saying goes. If you can, or if you think you can, or you think you can't, you're right. That sort of thing. So, like, I feel the same way. I don't want to be too pessimistic about it, but as it stands now, like the left is just in shambles. I mean, in the U.S., and that can't be denied. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It really is what like it's the left has always been contentious and sectarian, but I just think it's gotten to like a ridiculous degree at this
yeah,
point. So,
yeah.
I'm just gonna have to do a lot of rebuilding, a lot of rethinking, and I don't know. I don't know I'll be the first to say I really don't know what's next. And like I said, I could back when I first started out, I felt like, oh yeah, I could see a lot of this coming. But now I'm at a loss. I really don't know what will be the next step, what will happen next. All I can say is I keep my eyes open and try to be as, receptive to ideas as possible.
What do you think about the rise of like wokeism and how it's just become like this super powerful thing now?
Yeah. See, that's just it.
Is that do you see that as a way to kind of destabilize the left too, or whatever?
Yeah, to some degree. I mean, I like there's two things that can be there's two things that like pitfalls to approaching this new like kind of what they used to call political correctness in the 90s. I remember that it's not anything new. When I was in college, it was political correctness. Now they're calling it woke or whatever. It's basically the same thing. It's just been expanded to the internet. It's the as far as
but I would say it's become more powerful or more like.
Well, that's just because it's because at one time it was mainly an academic phenomenon, and now it's because of the social media and stuff like that. It's become more expanded into other way beyond the province of academia. But I think there are two pitfalls here. One is I don't want to ever dismiss critiques of racism and sexism and what have you and stuff like that, because I absolutely believe that a part of a future egalitarian society is overcoming such barriers and things like that. However, there is something like very false about the whole thing, very much just about getting hung up on word policing and no one wants to be condescended to, least of all like the minorities that they say they're standing up for. Can see through a lot of it as being white egotism, and that's why you have like Dave Chappelle being so popular, like in his thing and everything like that. Like I said, I it's just it might be a way of the state. It's like certainly like the way liberals have a tendency to personalize politics rather than making it like the way they or like attack symbols rather than doing things that are concretely practical. You know what I'm saying? Like what do you call taking making the big crusade about like taking off pictures off of commercial products that are not even really that insulting. It's just I feel like it's diverting away from while you're doing that, there's skyrocketing police brutality that should be entrenched amounts of gentrification within community, like things that really should. I feel like yes, I feel like that it does take the focus away from things that are much more pressing and much more that affect people's lives, working people's lives, be it black or white or what have you, directly, affect their lives more than like who's on a fucking syrup bottle or whatever, that would be that. Yeah.
Sorry, no, even the monuments. But I was gonna say I forget what I was gonna say now. Anyway, but what were you gonna say? Keep going.
Oh, nothing. I guess my just feeling on the matter is that yes, a lot of it is just the limitation of the scope of their understanding of the situation. That's about like thinking that just because you change words that will change reality, and that's almost a magical way of thinking. You know what I'm saying? But as someone who's informed by Marxism, I see it in terms of actual material conditions that need to, should be affected first before, and then other things will follow, but anyway, that's.
You know what? Mm-hmm. You know what, man? I was watching this guy, because I'm doing this thing where I'm like criticizing all these Christian leaders, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of the Christian leaders are super woke. and I hate it, you know. And there's
Yeah.
this black dude talking about how he's like talking about how like, you know, black parents or what is it like the absentee black father and that whole thing, right?
Hmm.
And so this guy's going on about how he's tracing it back to the slave days and oh the slaves they used to sell their fathers and they wouldn't keep the families together and actually that's kind of exaggerated a little bit too, but what I wanted to say is like you know did you know before the civil rights movement black families almost had greater family integrity than white. Did you know that? Because they're so like well churched, eh? And they're like very into those values back then. But the civil rights movement like kind of destroyed all that, you know. But what do you think about that, man?
Well, I mean, the civil rights movement was what came from the black church experience. I mean, and it was organized
Okay.
largely by the churches. I
Yeah,
mean,
but it was mostly I think it was organized by Jews again. But okay, keep going,
yeah.
keep going.
Well, I mean, the I guess I don't know. I mean, look, in as much as there, like looking back to the good old days, there's a lot of things you can look back to back then, like, in terms of like, what was it? There was actually like, relatively speaking, that I mean, there was more. If you want to look at the stats, because stats are very difficult to
Mm,
place correctly, but but relatively speaking, like violent crimes have gone down now, and actually
mm.
were actually worse at one point, more
Right,
so,
right, right,
more
right.
so. It's counterintuitive. You don't think that's the case, but the fact of the matter is, it's actually violent crimes have gone down, and they were much more prevalent. So it's difficult to say like how good was the good old days, because it's
Hmm.
you really it's there's so many different factors that I
Yeah.
don't. Yeah.
No, I hear you. I hear you. It's kind of like yeah,
Yeah.
we do kind of have a rosy picture of those days. And people don't
Yeah.
realize yeah, that crime has actually gone down. They don't get that.
Yeah.
It's weird
Yeah.
because the media keeps pushing this idea like that you're, and they want you to be afraid all the time, right? And
Oh
it's like
yeah. Well, it's to expand these police budgets into like
yeah,
like I've
they're
seen
like
it. I saw it. They
paramilitary now.
just
They're like
militarized it. They
yeah, yeah,
militarized
yeah,
it. They militarized it. It was the crack epidemic. Militarized the police budgets.
yeah.
Hey, listen, I'm kind of running low on
On
energy
battery?
here on the
Okay.
phone. I'm
All
sorry. I
right.
don't want to cut it short or anything.
No,
But
no,
are
no.
there
That's
any
cool.
other?
No, we've
If
been
there's
going for a
anything
while,
else,
bro.
yeah. If you want to, talk again, I'll be around. So
All right. Thanks, Phil. Justin. Thanks for having this chat.
yeah.
And we didn't get to the very interesting topic that we were going to talk about. Maybe we'll talk about that next time, okay? So,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Toronto
Okay.
Bible Study. Thanks for watching. And this has been our guest, Justin Addeo from Michigan. I thought it was New York.
Yeah. Now
Sorry.
I'm in Grand Rapids, right?
Nice, nice.
Originally from New York,
Nice,
Long Island.
nice.
All right.
Thanks for the chat, bro. I appreciate it. It was really great. And
Okay.
we'll get you on again for sure. Yeah. All right.
Oh,
See you, man.
take care, bro.
Take care.